Hey, I'm Stephanie, and it's time to talk about some beauty fails. Not my favorite topic because I would prefer it if everything that I buy actually worked for me, but we live in an imperfect world, so I'm going to share some of those imperfections with you today, keeping in mind that beauty is subjective. So if you happen to absolutely adore any of the things that I didn't like today, feel free to share your enthusiasm about those things in the comments because maybe I just missed something. But I honestly don't think that's the case, at least with the first item we're going to talk about, which was the most painful fail because it was the most expensive. It is the ULIKE Air 3 IPL hair removal device. But this was not your typical fail because I actually thought it worked pretty well, considering the fact that I wasn't sure it was going to work at all. These devices typically work best for people with higher contrast, so people with light skin and dark hair. But I have light skin and light hair, so I wasn't sure it was going to work at all, and when it did reduce some of my hair growth, I was pleasantly surprised. The claims, for the most part, seemed to hold up. I saw visible hair reduction within a month. I was even able to stop shaving my legs regularly, which was a plus, and the cooling technology in here, I think they call it Sapphire cooling technology, worked pretty well. It didn't get too hot. Every once in a while, I would feel like a zap of heat, but it was never too bad. So why was this a fail for me? First of all, I had purchased it for my underarms, and I really didn't see much of a change in the hair growth there. But because I was able to stop shaving my legs as much, I didn't think of it as a complete fail. That is, until this stopped working. It died literally one day after the warranty ended. And I realize it could just be coincidence, but it feels calculated, like it's planned obsolescence. Now, I realize that the nature of IPL devices means that they can't last forever. They're all going to have a limited lifetime because that lighting component can't keep flashing light forever. But to have it not work so quickly and then not be able to exchange the component is a little bit frustrating, especially because this cost over $200. And I feel like at that price point, making an exchangeable component would be really helpful. Now, I would like to continue trying at-home hair removal therapy, but based on my experience with this brand, I won't be repurchasing this device. First of all, because the main reason I bought this in the first place was because I wanted to take care of my underarm hair, and it didn't do that. But second of all, the fact that it died one day after the warranty also just rubbed me the wrong way. So for me, this ended up being a fail. Instead of trying a different IPL device from another company, I think I might actually try switching technologies entirely because there are now companies out there making laser devices that you can use at home. And I've been looking into that. It looks like it might be a little bit more effective. And based on the fact that IPL therapy did somewhat work on my legs but didn't on my underarms, maybe I just need a more effective type of device. The rest of the fails in today's video are all makeup. My bag got delayed while I was traveling, and so I purchased a couple of little things here or there to define my face until my makeup bag arrived. My first priority was a brow product because my blonde brows pretty much completely disappear at the first sign of light, whether that be sunlight, moonlight, stage lights, or a nightlight. They are shy creatures. So I decided to pick up this NYX Lift and Snatch Brow Tint Pen in the shade Ash Brown. I have heard so many people rave about this, so I was like, great, it's an affordable option, easily accessible at the drugstore, I'll pick that one up. And I can see why people really like this. The brush is extremely thin, so you can get a very fine hair-like stroke whenever you use it, and I also really like the color. This is what I have on this eyebrow today. What I don't like about this is the packaging. And I have to say, packaging is the main reason I don't shop at the drugstore because it takes a potentially awesome product like this and completely ruins it for me. The formula is nice, the brush is great, the color is awesome, but the packaging is atrocious. And by atrocious, I mean it's essentially broken because it is constantly leaking. And because I like the brush and the color so much, I was really trying to make this work. I stored it face down, I stored it face up, I stored it just on its side, trying everything to get it to stop leaking, but it just won't. And the leaks are so bad that when I take the cap off, it will often splatter the product everywhere. So it'll get on my clothes, it can get on my face, it can get in my hair, it has gotten on furniture, and this stuff is hard to remove, which makes it a plus when you're putting it on your brow, but it's definitely a minus when you're trying to get it off your clothes. And even if I do get lucky and happen to open it up without the product splattering everywhere, it inevitably gets on my fingers, and if I don't see it or if I miss a spot and then touch my face, I could get brow product all over my cheek. It has happened, and it is incredibly inconvenient. Everything about this product should be great. The brush, the color, the staying power. But because the packaging is trash, the whole thing is trash, because this is not the sort of thing I can repot. Working with this is a nightmare, so I am getting rid of it. Luckily, my bag did eventually arrive, and I was able to return to my old standard from Undone Beauty. It's the Flawlush brow pen. I have it in the shade Neutral Brown, and that's what's on this eye today. Packaging issues aside, there are some things I actually do like about the NYX pen better. First of all, I do like the brush better because it's thinner and it's more flexible, so it's easier to get that hair-like line. The second thing I like about the NYX pen that's better is the color. I just think this suits me a little bit more because it's a little ashier. But pretty much everything else, I prefer the Undone Beauty version. For example, I like the fact that the packaging works and it doesn't spray me with product when I least expect it. But also, I like the fact that this formula seems to sit on my skin better. This NYX formula will kind of bead up on my skin initially, and then it takes a little bit to soak in. And sometimes I have to go in with a spoolie to just kind of like smooth it out. I never have to do this with this. It immediately sits on my skin very smoothly. And I also like that this is both a brow pen and a brow gel. So I have two products in one. When I'm traveling, this is just so much more convenient. So despite the fact there are some things I actually like better about the NYX, the Undone Beauty one is going to beat it out every time. Moving on, during that same fateful trip to the drugstore, I also decided to pick up a liquid eyeliner. This one is the one I chose from Maybelline. It is the Hyper Easy liner in the shade Pitch Brown. Unfortunately, this liner has many of the same issues that the NYX brow pen did. Namely, the packaging is horrible. It leaks, making the application process incredibly messy. But on top of that, this formula I find to be very inconsistent. If I don't shake this enough, then the formula goes on really dry and it's incredibly difficult to get an even application. But if I shake it too much, then it's almost like the formula is too liquidy and it starts to leach into all the different texture on my eye. So although every once in a while I manage to hit the sweet spot and have this look absolutely amazing, for the most part, it either looks like a dry, chunky mess, or it looks like there's a tree branch growing up the side of my face. Plus, it seems to run down my lashes, which causes two different issues. One, it ends up dripping down onto my under eye, something I have never experienced with a liquid liner before. But the other issue is that it clumps my lashes together and makes it harder to apply mascara. I also wasn't impressed with the staying power because I felt like my outer corner tended to fade pretty quickly. I sneezed, and my eyeliner did this. Isn't that weird? But also, I felt like the color was a fail for me. As someone with low contrast coloring, I feel like brown often gives me a slightly softer, more organic looking option, which is why I picked it. And although it technically is brown, because if I put this next to black, it doesn't look black, but it's a very, very dark brown. And I was kind of hoping for something lighter. So all in all, this failed in all three categories: packaging, formula, and color. So I'm not keeping this. After having fought with the Maybelline for a while and realizing it was just not going to work for me, I then decided I would upgrade to this from Lancôme. It is the Idole Ultra Precise Waterproof Liner in the shade Matte Syrup Brown. Lo and behold, I paid a higher price point and the packaging doesn't leak, further confirming my bias away from the drugstore and towards higher-end makeup. Unfortunately, this also isn't the ideal product for me because in order to get any sort of color payoff out of this, I feel like I have to press really hard, as if that's the only way to get the ink to flow into the tip. Unfortunately, that increased pressure also tends to lead to a thicker application, making a thicker line. And as someone with small, deep-set eyes, I tend to prefer a more delicate eyeliner, a little bit thicker towards the outside, but I like it to fade into this very filigree, almost nothing line by the time it gets to the center of my eye. And that's just very difficult to do with a formula like this. On top of that, I can't just directly use the pen. I feel like I have to prime it on the back of my hand by pressing it really hard to get the ink flowing, and only then can I use it on my eye. So it's just not the most convenient format. It is possible for me to get the look that I want with this. For example, I was able to get it today. It just takes a lot more preparation and time and carefulness, which just doesn't make it the ideal product. So I wouldn't say this is a complete fail, especially because the color and the finish of this are exactly what I was looking for. The color is a soft milk chocolate brown, which gives me a much more organic look that's more native to my face while still giving me very sharp definition. And the satin finish just contributes to that softness. So I really, really, really like the color and the finish of this, which makes it worth the problems for now. But if you happen to have a suggestion, a color that's similar to this, that's in maybe an easier formula to work with, then please let me know, because I'd be all ears. I know I've been a little bit negative today, so let's end on a positive note. A couple of weeks ago, I did a video where I tried Chanel makeup for the first time, and several of you had asked if I could share an update. So here it is. Let's start off by making my French-speaking friends chuckle a little bit. I'm going to try to pronounce the name of this foundation. The Chanel Ultra Le Teint Fluide foundation was really nice, but very high coverage. I felt like it was very similar to my Estee Lauder foundation in that way, in that it was very high coverage, but it was also possible to sheer it out, even to the point of it just working as a skin tint. Now, although the foundations are similar, and I really do like both of them, they have their differences. For example, I do think that the Chanel finish is even prettier than the Estee Lauder Double Wears finish. But I don't feel like it's nearly as long wearing. On the days where I wore it as a full-on, full coverage foundation, I got about 6 to 8 hours of wear before it started to look a little bit powdery and get a little bit funny looking here in my nose and mouth area. But when I wore it as a skin tint, I could only get 4 hours out of it. The Estee Lauder Double Wear seems to just keep going and just never end. So I definitely prefer the wear time of the Estee Lauder. So although the Chanel was good, it hasn't managed to dethrone my holy grail of the Estee Lauder Double Wear foundation, even though the finish is a little bit nicer, because I find that if I add just a little bit of liquid luminizer to my Estee Lauder Double Wear foundation, I can get a very similar finish to the Chanel. So because it's just more reliable, has better wear time, and is more flexible, Estee Lauder still wins the day. And it turns out that I like the Chanel Cream eyeshadow in the shade Undertone so much more now than I did during my first impressions. And that is in large part thanks to helpful comments from you suggesting that I use this in conjunction with a spray. So I tried it in a bunch of different ways. Using distilled water, I tried it with Urban Decay's All Nighter Setting Spray, with MAC Fix Plus, and also with a drop of Duraline. And I have to say that my two favorites were MAC Fix Plus and Duraline. Both of those gave me a very sheer wash of satiny, sparkly, toasted marshmallowy goodness on my eyes. And now I can see why this is such a hit with so many people. It really is a great one and done shadow for an everyday look or a no makeup look. One of you did write to me to let me know that this has been long discontinued and it's probably too old to be using, and that's probably why it felt dry. So I did check the batch code out of curiosity, because for anybody who missed that video, this was decluttered to me from a friend. But it turns out this is only a year old, so I don't feel like that's too old for makeup. I don't know how long you're keeping your makeup. I'm probably keeping it beyond its expiration, but it smells fine, and I don't think that it's drying out because it's not pulling away from the sides of the container. It's not cracked or anything. I feel like it's just a drier formula. I think that's the nature of it. Instead of being a cream, it's more of a putty, and that's why it benefits so much from the increased moisture of a spray. But I also have to say, I saw this being sold in a Chanel boutique pretty recently. So is this actually discontinued, or is it only being sold in certain boutiques now? I'd be curious to know, because this is awesome. And since I started using this with a spray, I found that it not only looks splendid on its own, but it also does work as a great eyeshadow base. So I've been using it with the Les Beiges Warm palette. And this little diamondy shade looks spectacular on top. It's a very subtle topper. It's like almost nothing to it, but that's what I'm wearing on my eyes today. And I just feel like it gives this like subtle fairy-like filigree sparkle without being too much. It doesn't look like glitter. And I just really like the combination of these two things together now. I have also gotten to know the Les Beiges Warm palette better over the past couple of weeks. And although it's not the most mind-blowing special quint I've ever tried, it is nice. It gives a very soft, understated look, which is the sort of thing I tend to wear day to day. I don't work in an office, but I would imagine it's just a very office-friendly look. It's beautifully boring, which is exactly my cup of tea. The base beige shade in here does work really nicely for a no makeup look on its own. It just kind of softens the look of my eye a little bit, maybe softens any discoloration I might have. It also works great in conjunction with that dark brown shade for a more contoured look that's very natural. And this diamondy shade I find just looks spectacular when it's just a little bit of it on the lid. It adds just a little bit of sparkle without being too much. The two shades in here that I use the least are the two peachy shades, just because I don't wear a whole lot of color, but if there is going to be a pop of color in a quint, then peach is a good one for me to have because I feel like it makes my eyes lean blue, which I really like. And I do have to say these are nice because they're soft. The darker peach has a softer finish. It's more satiny, whereas the lighter peach is more frosty. And I find if I use those to create a gradient on my eyelid, that also looks really nice. Even though I am really enjoying the eyeshadows, I think the hit from the whole Chanel try-on is still the face palette. I've been getting a lot of use out of this. It's very useful colors for me. It works really well. And my favorites are still the bronzer and the two blushes. The highlighter is nice, but I do think it might be just a little bit dry for my taste. Still very pretty, no complaints. But I think that the colors that are going to get the most use out of this palette are these three here. All in all, these Chanel items have really grown on me. And I think that's a happier note to end on today. Of course, if you'd like to keep talking makeup, I've got another video for you right here. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you have a great week, and we can all remember that even stumbling can be a form of moving forward. So let's stumble in style.